This one is a doozy. So, this game has been getting all sorts of attention for a long time now. It's the newest game BioWare has made in 6 years. And man, has it shown that they have learned nothing. Reviews have been coming out, and opinions are swarming. People making their marks on cutscenes and dialogue that just does not resonate with titles prior. And also people defending the game beyond belief. But you know what? I'm just gonna play the game myself and see what it's like. I made a whole series on these stupid games, so I might as well get this one going.
Later.
Alright, so 30 hours later, I think I got my feelings down. So you know what? Let's go ahead and do this one last time. Let's add one more to this damn fantasy series that people got way too attached to. This is why Dragon Age the Veilguard is nothing special. The journey of the Dragon Age games is a complicated one. From going as a character making their mark on Ferelden as a hero that saved everyone from the Blight, to a young upstart in the city of Kirkwall who continues to rise despite the constant beatings both physical and mental, to an Inquisitor uniting the region against a common foe. The games have changed with each title, both for better and worse. But especially worst. One of the strong suits of Origins is how complete it feels. From starting as one of 6 potential Origin characters to leading the charge against the Darkspawn to defend Denerim. It feels like a true adventure that has taken the toll on both you and your companions, making daring rescues and risking decisions that change the balance of Ferelden. Dragon Age 2, by comparison, is a lot more restrictive, with having you in the shoes of Hawke. But you still had an influence on your companions, and the city of Kirkwall was bustling with personality and unintentionally funny moments. But that comes to a head with the setting of the main plot of the next game. Inquisition underwhelmed on many fronts, with a tedious open world and bland combat. It made up for world building and character development. While it's not my favorite batch companions, I will admit the game pays off with the development of a lot of characters in it. People like Cassandra, Varric, Dorian, and Cole are great to have around and have great depth to them. Returning characters like Morrigan build a lot on what they went through in previous games. And of course, the game delivers on making Solas a standout, and setting him up expertly as the next main antagonist. Meeting up with him in the Trespasser DLC brought great finality with his relationship with your Inquisitor, and could either be seen as a tragic tale of having to go against a former friend, or a traveling companion you never saw eye to eye on. But regardless, Solas had a huge tragic villainy to him that made him compelling. And it felt like he had great sorrow over what he was doing. But he kept pushing forward because he knew his people needed him. When it came to Veilguard, I kept the impression that this game would be similar to Inquisition, where it was going to be more focused on the action. But I hoped if nothing else, it could at the very least be a nice cap on the story that was set up. And I could not have been any more wrong. So, starting the game, we are greeted with a pretty cool looking illustration of Solas with a narration by Varric. And if this looks familiar to you, it should, because this is the cinematic trailer for when the game was called Dreadwolf. Honestly, it's probably one of the only things that this game keeps in touch with what the Dreadwolf was probably supposed to be. It gives a brief overview on who Solas was and what he is doing now, and gives a call to action to the new player character. And this is where we get into character creation. Just a random guy. Oh, what? That's a great start. There is a lot of discourse when it comes to the character creation in this game, and this is one of the strangest ones I have seen in a game. You get the option for the same 4 options of races that you had in Inquisition, but then once you get in, you get the strangest set of options for how your character can look. You have a large amount of variety for the face, which I think is a pretty good thing, but compared to the body, it's just absolute minuscule. The character's face has more morphing capabilities than their body does. Good luck making a large hulking Kunari in this game because it is very limiting, which is disappointing, but not surprising. A lot of people are shitting on this, but everyone forgets that character creation in every BioWare game has sucked. It's never been good. It's passable at best, and in most cases, players either use mods or just use the default look for characters. I have never made my own Commander Shepard to this day, because I'm just so used to this dude. So naturally, I've been going through a pattern with my characters in every game. I stick with humans, because the indomitable human spirit conquers all. Male mage in Origins, female rogue hawk in 2, and male warrior in Inquisition. So I made a female mage in this game. This was either a poor decision because playing a mage is boring as fuck in this game, or it wouldn't have mattered because the combat is overall poorly made, but we'll get to that later. Then we get to choose the background for our character, which I expected little to nothing when it comes to this actually making a big difference in the story, but regardless, I decided to be an Antivan Crow. Then I can set my Inquisitor and have my choices imported from previous games, which is a whopping 3 whole fucking choices! A lot of people have talked about this in detail. It was already known when we were going into this game before it even came out. And yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. The only choices that you get are 2 parts of what's basically dialogue in the Trespasser DLC, and who your Inquisitor fucked. Thanks guys, I'm sure that'll play a big part in the game to come. It's not like we need to know who the Divine is, who drank from the Well of Sorrows, or whether or not Hawk is still in the fucking Fade, but whatever. Enough people bitched about it, so let's just move on. So you start off with what is the gameplay showcase as the intro, and this is setting up the mood for how the game goes. Rook is trying to get information from someone in the bar, and I choose the direct approach. I know it's a direct approach because they tell me it is. And then I brawl with a bunch of goons in the tavern. Not really feeling very mage-like, but whatever. And now you get a good look at the world and the level design, which is so strange. This game has areas that are similar to God of War or Jedi Fallen Order. Now, when you look at the different environments you go through in this game, they do stand out from each other in a visual sense. The forest areas have a lot of bright fall coloring on the leaves, and the necropolis has the appropriate grim set dressing to match it, much like how the various regions did in Inquisition. But when you are going through them, they all feel so similar. Every area has the same type of chests, secret areas with loot, and enemies that essentially act the same. I can understand these types of labyrinth design in the areas like the Crossroads, but in places like Minrathis, this just feels like a fucking mess. You're telling me people live in this confusing-ass place? What the fuck is this, Camera? But speaking of the Crossroads, this game is really building on the whole portal hopping vibe, and I did not like it. The home base of the lighthouse is cool in concept, but it feels so disconnected from the world. I don't feel a sense of belonging in this game, because you're just hopping through the Alluvion so much and going from place to place that it just takes away from how the other games made their worlds feel lived in, and it was a true task to travel through them. Origins, you got this map showing where you were in Ferelden, and each area was distinct, having a main marketplace to shop and dungeons nearby to explore. Dragon Age 2 was not the greatest, as a lot of the areas in the game blended in as well, but with the game taking place in Kirkwall, it tries to give a sense of danger within the city, and the districts do feel distinct when comparing Hightown to Darktown, and the companions had their own hangout spots. I may not have liked the open world in Inquisition, but it still made me feel connected to the world because the areas were open for you to travel, from the caves to the towns, and the combat felt like it made sense as it was always away from civilized towns. Compare that to Veilguard, where we are just fighting the same Venatari in broad daylight, with a bunch of people in town. Like, holy shit, can you guys get your city in check? The quantity of these levels is honestly too damn high as well. When you go through them once and come back, they reset and open up with secret rooms and areas, overall making these places so tedious to go through. And it doesn't help that the side missions in this game are just go to location, talk to people, fight enemies, complete the mission, repeat. I think the game could have done better with fewer maps, cause wow is it a hassle. On top of that, there are also different side things to do in the areas as well, like investigating wolf statues and floating artifacts. And that's when I realized that These are similar types of side shit that was in Inquisition. The difference is that the map is not as big and open, but they're essentially the same Ubisoft tier shit. You do them and you unlock a new item or an upgrade to your character. But they're all the same type of thing, and it's in every map. It gets boring quickly. Also, the shops have almost nothing of value in them. It's almost always cosmetic shit or stuff to decorate your room in the lighthouse. There are a few stray moments where I found something of value in the shops that I visited. Now, something that was cool was that there are world abilities that your companions get to give you access to different areas of the map. For example, Harding can move rock platforms to provide you with a stepping stone or move a wall out of the way. So I thought, oh cool, so I'll need Harding to give me access to these areas. But then I found the same rock formation without Harding, and I was just able to move the fucking rocks myself? What the fuck? I could just do it too? Well, that's pretty convenient. Not to mention that these abilities are very personal to the companion's stories and play a huge part in the development. But nope. Fuck you, Harding, for having earthbending, and you, Lucian, for having an imaginary friend that spawns platforms for us. It's my thing now. Because I have the special dagger, I guess. And I know some of you might say, well, Jake, they didn't want it to be tedious to swap between companions to get different access to different areas. And to that I say, 1. Then why litter so many checkpoints in these maps where you can swap in and out companions? 2. Why limit us to only having 2 companions at a time when having 4 would make it less tedious to swap between them? And 3. That was the part of the risk and reward in the previous games. One of the main reasons you brought a rogue character like Liliana with you in Origins was so she could pick the locked chests and doors to get bonus loot. It got you to think about the party you took and how they paired with each other. But, can't have that, so you can just use it no matter what. And then we get to the character design of this game, which is pretty hit or miss for me, honestly. I think some of the characters overall look fine. Characters like Nev, Harding, and Darvin overall look good. And even some of the side characters, like the first Warden, have some cool armor. Especially this guy. Where is this good hunter shopping at? Bro is dripped. But then people like Tash, Emmerich, and the new Morrigan are honestly trying too hard. The Kunari are so confusing to see in this game, man. They are unrecognizable from what we had in Dragon Age 2. Now, the sad truth is that these designs were already going in this direction in Inquisition. But Bull was mostly a standout Kunari with his designs. The thing that confuses me is that there are enemy Kunari in this game that have the same hulking look that matches the Aeroshock in Dragon Age 2, but they are the only ones. All the main Kunari look so bland in comparison. They just look like humans with horns on their heads. But also, what the fuck is this Darkspawn design? These guys went from terrifying Chaos Warriors to this? Speaking of unrecognizable aspects from previous games, there are a few cameo characters that make appearances, and they all look very different, to say the least. I knew this was Morrigan because she was in the trailer, and obviously, Claudia Black is voicing her as well. But then later down the line, you get a brief, and I mean very brief cameo from Dorian. Now, I'm not upset about this. Dorian is a character that I think makes sense to show up in this game. But this is Dorian? I didn't even recognize him until the subtitles. Bro looks completely unrecognizable. Also, Isabella is here as well. She literally just shows up. No fanfare or build-up. She's just in the next scene all of a sudden. And she's dressed like a Shantae character for some reason. I mean, I guess it matches the pirate vibe, but I don't know, man. The atmosphere of this game is so odd. And while it can be seen as decent on its terms, it's not hitting the mark of what previous games looked like. The worlds are tedious and don't give a feeling of immersion when traveling them. They're boring, and they get old quickly. Which can also be said about the combat. The combat in this game is the opposite of Inquisition. In Inquisition, it had a rough start at the beginning, but gradually got better at the higher levels. Veilguard, on the other hand, has a passable combat in the early stages, but it gets incredibly bland in the later stages. Enemies can become spongier, and they take longer to kill. So, the way it works is that each class has 2 different types of weapons to use. For a mage, you have your staff for mid to long range, and then you have your orb and dagger for mid to close range. And overall, I can see the intent for what they were going for with this. And at the beginning of the game, I had a pretty good time chaining attacks together, getting new abilities, charging my magic Kamehameha at a beefy enemy. But what bogged everything down was realizing how few abilities you have. With every Dragon Age game, the hotbar has gotten smaller, and now we are only down to 4. 3 main attacks, and an ultimate ability. To me, it makes leveling up less special, because the skill tree mostly go into passives that buff damage output or defense, and when they do get a new ability, it replaces the other ones. Maybe I just missed my mage in Origins because there was something that was so fun about being a Rune Knight Paladin that can stasis an entire pack of Darkspawn while also giving buffs to my teammates, dual-wielding swords, and I just so happened to also have Fireball. The loose bag nature of Origins combat and skills was clunky and hard to understand, but it made up for insane creativity for the player to create their unique build. I've said before that Inquisition's combat felt like a lesser version of Diablo, and Veilguard feels the similar way. A lot of the aspects on display remind me quite a bit of Diablo. And I love the Diablo games, but it doesn't have the same appeal that those games have when I play this, because I am going into Diablo expecting to fight hordes of enemies and find chests with new loot, while having fewer focused abilities. And here, I feel limited in my creativity of how I want to play my class. In the latter sections of the game, the battles take longer. This game implements the worst type of difficulty setting by making your foes do more damage and have more health. The boss fights are when it's at its worst. The damage output moves at a snail's pace, and there is little for you to do other than dodge and hit. But it was here where I saw that maybe I'm lucky to have picked a mage in this case, because if I was a martial in this fight, this could have been even more tedious having to get up close to do damage. The dodge, hit, and parry style of combat that was popularized in the 2018 God of War games is a system that has been replicated a few too many times. Yes, it worked in these titles because they have a focus on the combat and making the enemies fun to fight and get stronger in more ways than just health. And it doesn't help that Veilguard has combatants who all feel very similar to each other. Every type of bad guy has a close range fighter, the range attackers, the brute that charges you, and the magic AoE attackers. And all you have to do to avoid them is dodge. Dodge! There isn't a strategy to who or which enemy you go after first, like making sure you kill the mage in the previous games to make sure they don't cast a powerful spell, or setting your teammates to do specific tasks in different situations. Now every combat encounter is feeling like the same one. And that feeling is doubled with how your companions work in this game. So as mentioned before, the party size has decreased from 4 to 3. On one hand, these are smaller, more intimate map designs, so I can sort of get why they did this, but it is paired with a command system that is more basic than how Mass Effect was. Basically, you have a primer and detonator system with your companion's abilities, and the game has a big focus on having one ability prime a target, followed by you or another companion to detonate for a combo. Here's the problem. I never used it. In most combat encounters, you're just going to use your own abilities to kill everything yourself. The only time I ever used it was on boss fights. Maybe that was the point, but it doesn't help that the impact your companions have on combat feel very minuscule compared to what you do. This sucks because with the special powers that each companion has, I feel like it would have been great to play as them and experience a unique side of gameplay. Almost like that's how every fucking game beforehand worked. If you played a martial character in Origins, you could still see how mages played like when you brought someone like Morrigan or Wynn. It was a great way to showcase all the classes in the game while also having the player commit to theirs. Hell, Final Fantasy has similar combat to this and they were able to achieve it. Now, I don't particularly like that gameplay style either, but being able to switch between characters is cool, and it changes up the gameplay at least a little bit. On top of that, companions are also unable to get downed. So there is no tension when they are in a fight because they will always be available to use their abilities when they are ready. And I noticed a very few times where the enemies would aggro onto them because in most cases, they just focus on you. After all, You're the one with the health bar! It takes away from these moments of strategy and triumph where I could cast a buff and send a marshal into the fray to hold off the bastards, while my mages stayed back and charged a powerful spell that did massive damage. So what are the companions at the end of the day in this game? Extra abilities. Literally an extension of the spells you already have. And when there is no way to have them take aggro and all the enemies just automatically aggro onto you, it's infuriating. Dragon fights are when the game takes forever, and my teammates are not helping. All I can do is mash my basic attack, wait for my abilities to reset from cooldown, and dodge. I am not feeling the tension, I am feeling the frustration. Then we get to the armor and inventory management in this game. For your own character, it's pretty simple. Just equip the ones with the higher number and the ones that do more damage. If you have played any amount of Destiny or Borderlands, you know the drill. Okay, like seriously, why are there so many outfits that don't have shoes? Like what the fuck is up with that? Like why does someone on the dev team have a fucking foot fetish? What the fuck? Alright, there's one with shoes. Hold on, there's another one. Like what the fuck? Put some fucking shoes on! But they also decided to bring back the Dragon Age 2 thing, where you can't customize your companion's armor. Well, you kind of can. Everyone has set outfits and weapons that you can unlock from exploring the world and increasing your bonds with them. And I guess this is slightly better than what was in 2, but I just like setting everyone's armor, man. It's annoying how much they set these characters to be so incredibly unique from one another with their world abilities and superpowers that only they have. And then you just get the same abilities regardless of whether or not they are in your group, and they barely do any damage beyond the primer and detonator abilities. So, is the combat bad? No. But it's really not that great either. I got no desire to go back and play as any other class. If you played as a marshal, let me know how it was. I'm curious if it was more fun than a mage. But finally, it's time we talk about the story. BioWare loves their theme of unity. Ever since KOTOR, or even Baldur's Gate, the theme of the games have always had a large layer of unity against a common foe. When you peel back what you are doing, it's bringing a bunch of unlikely people, factions, and communities together to rally against a larger enemy. Now that is something that they are good at. They have delivered on many fronts to sell that feeling engagingly with a grand spectacle and satisfying moments, even if the theme is repeated. They have made it unique in terms of many factors in their titles. Now that theme is very much still in play here, as now it is how you as the player character Rook rally your companions and the factions that you work with to stop the gods. But to get to that, we have to introduce the gods. Taking place 10 years after Inquisition, Varric finds your new player character to stop Solas from enacting his plot to merge the Veil with the main world. And you very quickly do just that. You stop his witch roll, almost collapsing a building on him, and then Varric is stabbed, and everyone freaks out that he's going to die. Then we see glimpses of two figures emerging from the portal. A massive quake happens, and you get a title screen. And then it is revealed that Solas is living in Rook's dreams and is imprisoned.
God damn it!
So yeah, they fucking sideline Solas as the main antagonist, at least for 3/4 of the game. He's a lesser Johnny Silverhand type of character that argues with Rook in the Dream Realm. This is incredibly disappointing because we have been waiting almost 10 years for this. Solas' whole plan gets shafted by some dipshit Varric met at a bar. To me, it seems clear that BioWare rode themselves into a corner and didn't know what to do with him throughout the entirety of the game. So they decided to sideline him and unleash him for a climax. So now we are left with these two powerful entities that emerge from the Veil. Elgar'nan and Gillenane, and they seek to tear down this world and rebuild it in their image. They are also corrupting the minds of mortals to do their bidding and having them stretch out to corrupt and control Theodas. It's Corypheus. We're fighting fucking Corypheus again.
Okay.
Yeah, why have a larger focus on the character that was set up to be the main villain of the previous game and show the slow corruption and downfall of his ways? Nah, fuck that. Let's just revert to evil bad guys number 1 and 2. And the bad guys that take his place have no nuance to them. They are just fucking evil gods. Gillenane is the creator of the Blight and just wants to corrupt and destroy everything. And yet she is less compelling than the Archdemon was in Origins, who, if you don't remember, was just a giant demon dragon. And then Elgar'nan is just Corypheus 2.0. He's more malicious and manipulative of the two, and his whole thing is that he mindfucks the other factions in the game to join him. Hell, even Loghain had somewhat of an extra layer to him, even if it was just make Ferelden great again. Now let's talk about the other factions in this game. Coming out of character creation, your Rook can be from one of the main factions you will engage with. As mentioned before, I chose to be an Antivan Crow. So for those of you who remember Origins, you got a companion that was an Antivan Crow, Zevran. He is hired to kill you, but you can recruit him if you spare his life. And when you learn about his past, he will talk about how the Crows were pretty shitty people. They groomed him into being a killer as a child, and they make it clear that you're there for good. If you leave the Crows, you are putting a target on your back. They are merciless and they kill for profit, no matter who's hiring. Those Crows are not the ones we see in this game. The Crows in this game are the champions of Antiva, and are fighting against the oppressors of the Antan. And that goes for the rest of the factions in this game. None of them are allowed to be morally gray or have flaws anymore. All the factions from beforehand that had morally questionable tactics, even the Grey Wardens, who were seen as the more honorable ones, were willing to kill a recruit if they stepped back from the joining. But now, they just blend in and barely stand out. Every faction is a league of good guys that fights one of the main evil beings. What is the difference between a crow and a shadow dragon? Because as far as I'm concerned, they are both the main factions of their cities that fight off the ones oppressing them. What the fuck is a Veil Jumper? I'll tell you what they are. They're the fucking Dalish! But they didn't want a faction that was restrictive to a specific race, so they just have a group of people that travel through the Veils, because I guess this shit is just common knowledge now. The Grey Wardens are still a bunch of dipshits, like how they were in Inquisition. They can't catch a damn break, man. And then the Lords of Fortune. Yeah, that's what they are. They like gold and treasure. Yeah, real riveting stuff. So, when you select your background, you get stuff like extra dialogue at different moments, and faction-specific characters will recognize you. And that's about all it does. It just alters the dialogue, so instead of meeting Rook, they just already know you and say something like, "Ah, Rook, welcome home!" I can already tell that there isn't much to this. The game will have the same opening no matter what, and there isn't much intrigue with who your Rook was before, because they don't build on that. Now, this is very much a personal thing for me, but I don't like it when all the races in a fantasy setting are in the same place all the time, and the factions always include every species. To me, it makes them feel less unique. Maybe this is just a Tolkien pattern that I've come to expect with most settings, but I have expectations regarding humans, elves, dwarves, and in this case, Qunari. I feel like the Veil Jumpers should be a group comprised of elves, because they are the eldest species, and with how elves, and especially the Dalish, act in this series, I feel like it would make more sense if they sheltered this from the rest of the world and took on this burden on their own. But at the same time, you can have factions like the Grey Wardens that can be comprised of all races, as the battle against the Darkspawn is a constant threat that concerns everyone. But as they stand now, the backgrounds don't give a unique feeling to my Rook. Not as the unique feelings in Origins or even the life paths in Cyberpunk did. Overall, Rook is not a compelling character to play. The tones you can select don't give me a feeling of choosing the tone I want. I can't tell a character to get their shit together, and it feels like I am restricted to being exactly who BioWare wants me to be. Rook is the least interesting character to play as, with the Inquisitor just being a little bit above them. Then we get to the companions, which honestly, I wish I had more to say about them. But every one of them is just so surface level. Now, I understand that with most BioWare games, the companions won't always be hits, even with the good games. There are always those outliers that are just bland and one note. That's why we dog on characters like Jacob, Oghren, and Blackwall. But at the same time, there are companions that if you ask 10 people, you would get 10 different opinions on them. I think Liara is overrated and gets special treatment, but she's a fan favorite to others. I don't have a problem with Ashley, and I like how she grows in the series, but someone else might hate her. And sure, you can probably find the same opinions in this game as well, but it's dependent on whether the main trait of the character works for you. Because the characters don't change or have significant growth, no matter how much the message on the side likes to remind me it does. Hardening a character like Nev and Veilguard is not the same as hardening a character like Alistair and Liliana in Origins. With these two characters, you are influencing them to undertake a huge character moment that changes their values and traits in a way that significantly changes how they are seen going forward, and also has massive story changes. In the case of Nev, all that happens is that she gets grumpy for you for not choosing her city, and she gets new special abilities. But that's it. You don't even get locked out of a romance with her. But enough beating around the bush. Let's go through the companions. I started really liking Harding. She has this girl next door vibe that I thought was really endearing. And it helps that she's a character that I know from Inquisition. But she has a lot of moments of talking too much in awkward situations, which is cute at first, but she never grows past that, and she doesn't really get much more beyond that. And after a while, I just want her to get her shit together. Her romance was incredibly unsatisfying, which sucks because I was excited to see a game that finally has a dwarf romance option. Nev overall, I would say, is fine. She's the no-nonsense mage detective of the group, but that's all she is. As I've mentioned before, there doesn't seem to be a significant change with hardening her, and she doesn't have any real depth unlike Cassandra in Inquisition, where she had a harsh exterior but a softer side buried within her. Nev doesn't have that. She might look good, but I expected more. Balara combines the annoying traits of Sarah and Meryl into one character. Outside of her dilemma with her brother, she has nothing going for her other than being the quirky character who doesn't shut the fuck up. I never brought her with me. Davrin is the standard Grey Warden character in this game. He's the most stoic and serious, I would say, next to Nev. And honestly, it's a breath of fresh air because he takes shit seriously. But his personality boils down to single guy in his 30s with a dog, because all he cares about is his griffin. I mean, good for you, I guess. Tash is a poor representation of what they wanted them to be. They wanted a character struggling with who they are and eventually growing to accept themselves. But the way they do it is incredibly preachy and not genuine, because they are shown to be an immature child who throws temper tantrums. The scene that everyone's been memeing on, with them telling their mom that they are non-binary, is cringy and uncomfortable, yeah, but the thing is that the mom is not even being rude. She just doesn't understand what it means and is trying to. But she remains respectful, yet the scene is made in a way that shows that she is wrong. But I don't see it that way. There are trans characters that I believe are represented well, and Tash is not one of them. Lucanus, for being one of the coolest conceptualized characters, is somehow one of the most bland, mainly due to how the crows were treated in this game, but his whole dilemma with Spite just kind of falls on its head quickly. Spite doesn't feel like a corrupting demon, he's just a troublemaker. Emmerich is one of the weirdest cases of the characters in this game, not because of him overall, I think his concept is okay, but I feel like the other characters should look at him as more of a weirdo. The dude talks to corpses. That shit isn't right. And I like the idea of him being afraid of death. I think it's a fresh and interesting concept for a necromancer archetype. But you rarely get these serious talks about him. And instead, it's just goofy shit with this stupid skeleton butler. So that's the companions. Overall, are they the worst companions ever? No. Andromeda still holds that title. But they all fall pretty flat in the end. In fact, I don't even really think of them as companions. They feel more like coworkers. Someone you'd have a friendly conversation with every now and then, but rarely am I going to ask them to go out for a beer. Moving on, we get to the finale of this game, which a lot of people have said it's good. And I would agree. But I very quickly realized that this is just a suicide mission from Mass Effect 2. You assign different characters to do different tasks, and if you did their loyalty mission, they get out okay. If not, they die. And then we finally get to see Solus do something. And I've seen that different outcomes can happen, which I think is pretty cool. But I wish we could have seen more of this throughout the game. The vibe in this finale is incredibly dire, and it had me wondering, where was this throughout the game? There are some moments, yeah, but they don't last. And to be honest, a good 25% doesn't make up for an unremarkable 75%. While I was happy to see Solus actually get out and have some cool moments, I was left disappointed. So now we have a Dragon Age game that has bland combat, a boring plot, and uninteresting side objectives. But what game did I just describe right now? If you said Inquisition, you would be correct. With all the talks and frustrations that was going on with this game not even being out, I was left a little confused. This is the direction that the series has been going on for a while now. And I think the answer to that is this name and this name. This is a series that a lot of people hold in their hearts, regardless of the quality of each title. And this is the name of a company that used to mean something. To me, this game is not worth the attention, in every sense of the word. It's not worth praising beyond belief, and it's also not worth denouncing every second. But after all, this series is one that people grew up with. And this is it now. BioWare has since moved all their attention and resources into focusing on the next Mass Effect game. And it seems like they want to move on from Dragon Age. And you know what? So do I, and so should you. I will continue to revisit old BioWare games and remember the company that it once was. But I'm not holding out hope for any new title that they come out with. The unfortunate thing about all this, unlike Andromeda, that shitstorm happened over there. Everything that we loved was still in the Milky Way, and what was happening in the Andromeda Galaxy could be ignored. But with Veilguard, now it's affecting the lands of Theodos as we know it, and it's looking very different from how we remember it. If you enjoyed the game, good for you. I have no desire to try different classes, romances, or choices. I will continue to revisit Origins, play 2 if I'm feeling up for it, and maybe give Inquisition another chance. But it's going to take a lot for me to come back to this one. And another video finally done. This one took a little bit longer than I was hoping for, but we got it out within the month, so I'm happy about that at least. Thank you guys for watching. We got one more video to end off the year, and this one's going to be a lot more positive and be talking about something in a much better mood. So I hope you guys will join me for that. But we also have some other plans that are going to be coming into the future as well. A new show is on the horizon, and I hope you'll join us for that as well.